Oh, hello there. Welcome to my station. My name's Mr. Evans. I do all sorts of things around here. It's my job to make sure everything at the station runs just the way it should, without confusion or delay. But no matter how busy I am, I always find time to read a story about the adventures of my good friend Thomas. Would you like to hear a story? That's fantastic. I'll tell you what, I'll meet you in my office. See you there. Hey, I ran all the way, and you still got here before me. Although, I just met Mr. Stamp, the postman. He gave me all these letters. I think that slowed me down a bit. I always put the post under this stone paperweight until I get a chance to read it. That stops it blowing away when I come racing in. I know someone else who likes to race. That's right, Thomas. And in today's story, Thomas goes to a very important race on the mainland. The story is called The Great Race.
One sunny day on the island of Sodor, Thomas the Tank Engine met Gordon's brother.
They call him the Flying Scotsman,
Gordon said. Gordon's brother was going to the Great Railway Show on the mainland.
That's where engines compete to see who's the fastest and strongest,
he explained. Thomas really wanted to go too. Thomas asked the Fat Controller about streamlining an engine from Sodor so it could compete and win at the show. The Fat Controller loved the idea.
We'll streamline Gordon to make him faster than ever. But Gordon was not the engine Thomas had in mind.
The next day, engines from all over the world arrived on Sodor.
Where are you going?
The dock manager asked.
The Great Railway Show,
puffed one engine.
That'll be on the mainland,
the manager replied. The engines hurried back to the ferry. In her rush, a brightly painted engine named Ashima bumped into Thomas.
Whoa!
He peeped as he teetered over the water. Ashima and the dock workers pulled him back from danger. Ashima apologized and asked Thomas how she might get to the mainland. Why should she go to the Great Railway Show? Thomas puffed to his carriages. She's beautifully painted, Clarabelle said. Any engine can get painted, Thomas puffed. And that gave Thomas another idea.
At the steamworks, Thomas asked Victor to repaint him. I was thinking maybe lightning bolts and racing stripes, he said.
When the Fat Controller stopped by to check on Gordon's streamlining, he liked the idea, but not for Thomas. Later that day, Thomas saw Ashima. She didn't understand why Thomas wanted to be repainted. You can only be you, she said. Every engine is useful and has a job to do.
Ashima asked Thomas if he was good at shunting and sorting trucks. That gave Thomas his best idea yet. I'll show the Fat Controller what I do best.
But poor Thomas had an accident shunting, so Percy was sent to compete in the shunting challenge. On the day of the Great Railway Show, the Sodor engines were ready to go. Gordon had been painted and streamlined. His new nameplate said, The Shooting Star.
Later, Victor realized that Gordon's safety valve hadn't been reinstalled after his streamlining. Without it, he could overheat.
Thomas rushed the valve to the Great Railway Show, but the race was starting. Green flags waved and the engines took off. Gordon raced along. Suddenly, his face turned red. Steam hissed from inside his streamlining. Then his boiler burst. He sputtered to a stop in a cloud of steam. The other engines sped on. Meanwhile, over at the shunting challenge, Percy was scared, so he asked Thomas to enter the race in his place. Thomas agreed. Thomas chuffed through round after round, pulling tankers and flatbeds into line.
He beat big engines from many countries. In the end, only Thomas and Ashima were left. And then the final challenge began.
The two engines steamed back and forth, buffering boxcars into place.
The sidings were full. It was a race to the finish. But Thomas saw an overturned truck on Ashima's track and rushed to push it aside. Ashima raced to victory.
You let me win, Ashima said to Thomas. It wouldn't have been fair anyway, Thomas peeped. Your track was blocked.
At the awards ceremony, the judges had a surprise.
We would like to declare 2 winners in the shunting challenge. Ashima wins for being fastest. Thomas wins for helping his competitor. The Fat Controller was very proud of Thomas for being really useful and a truly good sport.
He was just being Thomas, sir, Percy peeped. You can only be you, Thomas said, and winked at Ashima. There's nothing else you can possibly do. So Thomas helped his new friend Ashima, and they both won a cup at the great race. Fantastic. Hey, that gives me an idea. Ashima is very beautifully painted, but my paperweight's a bit dull, isn't it? We could brighten up this stone by painting it like Ashima. So let's get started.
Here are some stones painted to look like Thomas, Ashima, and Gordon, a shooting star. To do this, you'll need a stone to paint, some paints, some brushes, a pen and pencil, some water, a piece of felt and some scissors, and some glue and a brush. First, paint your stone white. This will make the colours you use stay nice and bright. Next, carefully draw the design of your stone with a pencil. This will help guide you when you paint your stone. We're going to paint this stone to look like Ashima, but you could paint any engine you like. Start by painting the big areas first. Use the pencil lines to guide you. Now I'm painting Ashima's cab and her windows. When you've finished the big parts, use a small brush and paint the smaller details. Try to be as neat as you can. Instead of painting Ashima's face, I'm using a pen to draw the small details. I used a bit of white paint for the eyes. Next, ask an adult to cut a piece of felt and glue it onto the bottom of your stone. This will stop the stone from scratching anything when you use it as a paperweight. You could paint your stones with some varnish like I've done to make them shiny. And there you are, Ashima, Thomas and the shooting star. Don't they look great? See you soon!